You know that feeling when the person you thought would stay suddenly disappears? Not slowly, not with signs, just gone. No explanation, no warning, no message. One day they're replying with hearts and voice notes, the next day it's just silence. And what hurts most isn't just that they left, it's that they left like you never existed. I still remember the night it happened to me. It wasn't even a fight. No argument, no drama. We had talked that afternoon. They laughed. I laughed. I remember their voice clearly. It was warm, familiar, safe. And then nothing. No reply that night, no reply the next morning, no reply for the next 3 months. I stared at the screen for days. You know that weird thing where you type something, then erase it, then type it again, then backspace. You don't want to sound desperate, but you are desperate. I was. Desperate for an answer. Desperate for something that would tell me I mattered. That I wasn't just some chapter that got skipped. Some page they were tired of reading. Some song they got bored of halfway through. I didn't even need a reason. I would have accepted anything. Even a lie would have felt kinder than silence. But ghosting doesn't give you that. Ghosting doesn't break your heart. It makes you feel like you never had one to begin with. I kept replaying the last message I sent. Did I say something wrong? Did I joke too much? Was I too honest? Too open? Too much? That's what it does to you, you know? It doesn't just make you question the other person, it makes you question your worth, your presence, your memory. I used to think people who disappeared just weren't brave. Now I think maybe they were never real to begin with. Because real ones don't vanish. They tremble, they stutter, they struggle, but they don't vanish. I remember one evening sitting alone at the bus stop. It had just rained and the sky was this dull gray blue, like someone had smudged all the colors away. My phone buzzed, and for a second, I swear my heart skipped. But it wasn't them. It was a weather alert. Rain tonight, possible flooding. And I laughed, because the flooding had already happened inside me. My chest was full of things unsaid. My lungs heavy with waiting. My hands cold from holding on to nothing. You know how silence sounds when it's been going on for too long? It doesn't echo. It presses. It presses on your skin. It whispers, they forgot you. It whispers, you weren't enough. It whispers, move on. But it doesn't let you move. And so I sat there, letting the night soak through my jacket, pretending the chill was just the wind, not the aiming of being erased. You know what no one tells you? When someone ghosts you, they take more than themselves. They take your sleep, your appetite, your playlist, your trust. They take the version of you that believed in softness, that believed in good morning texts, that believed I'm not going anywhere, meant something. And what they leave behind is this ghost version of you. One that still checks the messages, still rereads the old threads, still thinks maybe, just maybe, they'll come back and say, sorry, I was scared, I made a mistake. But they don't. And the worst part? You can't even hate them properly. Because you don't know why they left. They gave you no story, no villain to blame, no ending to understand. Just a blank page with your name written once, then crossed out. So what do? You sit in it. You sit in the quiet, in the questions, and the aching pause of being forgotten. And you wonder if you'll ever feel seen again. You know what's strange? It's not just the absence, it's the way it changes you. I used to be someone who smiled too fast, who trusted too quickly, who believed that if someone looked me in the eyes, they meant it, that their words carried weight, that connection meant care, and care meant staying. But after being ghosted, I stopped laughing at my own jokes, stopped sharing songs, stopped starting conversations first. Because ghosting doesn't just steal a person, it steals the parts of you that wanted to connect in the first place. There was this night, maybe 2 weeks after they vanished. I walked into a coffee shop I used to love. Same corner seat, same soft jazz playing in the background. But everything tasted different. The coffee was bitter. The air was heavier. And the barista, she smiled at me like she always did. But I couldn't smile back the same way. It felt like I had aged a little. Like something inside me had wrinkled, hardened, quieted. I sat there watching people talk, friends, couples, laughter, phones lighting up. And I remember thinking, they still exist in someone's world. They still get messages, still get chosen. I used to be that, now I'm not even missed. And that's the cruelest thing about ghosting. It's not just abandonment, it's unrecognition. Like you were a phase. Like you were a convenience. Like your love was background noise they could just turn off. No apology, no thank you, not even a goodbye. And thought about texting them one last time. Not to ask why, just to say, like, you could have said something, but I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally realized they didn't. You know how people say, like, closure is something you give yourself? That sounds poetic, but it doesn't feel real when you're in it. When you're staring at a chat thread that ended mid laugh, mid hope, mid us, what does closure even look like when you were erased? When there's no ending to rewrite? When the door was never shut, it just disappeared? I started noticing small things. How I avoided songs we used to send each other. How I skipped over restaurants that reminded me of them. How I started hesitating before opening any message. Ghosting made me scared of joy, scared of presence, because I kept thinking, what if this disappears too? And honestly, I hated that version of me. The one always waiting for something to end. I wanted to be light again, to be open, to be brave. But grief isn't just about death. Sometimes it's about people who are still alive, just not alive for you anymore. And mourning that kind of loss, it's lonelier. Because no one brings you flowers. No one says, I'm sorry you were ghosted. They say, move on. Let it go. Don't give them power. But they already took the power, didn't they? They took it when they left in silence. They took it when they made you question your voice. They took it when they taught you that your love, your presence, was disposable. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry if you felt that. If you've waited for a reply that never came. If you've refreshed your notifications hoping for their name. If your heart dropped at every scene with no response. If your worth got tangled in their absence. Because I know how that silence feels. It's not quiet. It's screaming. It's every insecurity echoing back louder. It's a mirror that only shows your doubt. And some days you'll try to be strong. You'll say, I'm better off. But inside you'll still wonder, was I not enough to deserve goodbye? Let me tell you something. Not loudly. Not like a truth shouted from rooftops. Just gently. Like someone sitting beside you, not to fix anything, just to hold space. You were not too much. You were not forgettable. You were not some passing phase. They left, but you remained. And that matters. You know those mornings when you wake up and for a second you forget? Just a second, before the memory rushes in like cold water on your face. Before your mind reminds you, they're not here anymore. They didn't say goodbye. They just stopped. I had mornings like that, where my eyes open soft, my body still warm under the blanket, and for a fragile second, everything felt untouched. Then I'd reach for my phone. Check, refresh. Check again. Still nothing. And the emptiness didn't just sit in my chest. It stretched into my day, into how I spoke, how I moved, how I sat in class or walked past strangers. I didn't cry all the time. I wasn't always sad, but I was always aware. Aware that something was missing. Someone was missing. That somewhere in the world, a person I once knew was doing fine without me. Living, laughing, unbothered. That hurt more than heartbreak. Because it made me invisible. Like a ghost carrying memories no one else remembered. I stopped by telling my friends about it after a while. They meant well. They said all the usual things. You deserve better. Forget them. They don't matter. But the truth is, they did matter. To me, they mattered. And pretending they didn't just made it worse. So I kept it quiet. Grief doesn't always need noise. Sometimes it just needs space and silence. And someone to say, it's okay to miss them, even if they don't miss you. I started writing letters I'd never send. Things I wanted to say but knew I wouldn't. Not because I didn't have the words, but because I knew they didn't have the care. And still, there was this ache in my fingers every time I picked up my phone, like they were trained to reach for someone who had already chosen not to reach back. You ever feel that? Like your body remembers someone long after your mind is trying to forget them. I'd see someone walking down the street with the same hairstyle, same jacket, same way of turning their head. And for a second, just a second, my heart would jump. Then it wasn't them. It was never them. But my body hoped. Even after my mind stopped believing, ghosting leaves a bruise in the parts of you that used to hope easily, used to smile without checking if it was safe, used to speak without rehearsing how much space you were taking up. I found myself growing quiet in conversations, not because I had nothing to say, but because I feared being too much again. That maybe if I shared too many thoughts, too many feelings, too many me's, they'd leave too. That's the wound ghosting leaves. Not just the absence, but the fear that your presence was the reason they left. And so I changed. Little by little, not in dramatic ways, but in soft, sad ones. The way I held my phone tighter, the way I flinched when someone took too long to reply, the way I never said "I miss you" first anymore. Because ghosting taught me one thing. Sometimes, even the most beautiful connections can end in silence. And no matter how many memories you shared, how many hours you stayed up talking, how many jokes only the two of you understood, they can still decide that you don't exist. And you'll be left holding a version of them they've already let go of. A memory you have to bury without a funeral. A goodbye you never got to say. A closure that never comes. So what do you do with it? You carry it. Not like a weight, but like a scar. Soft, quiet, still tender when pressed, but yours. Yours to remember, yours to outgrow, yours to one day say, "That hurt me, but it didn't end me." You know that moment when someone new texts you, "Hey," and your chest tightens a little. Not because you're excited, but because you're already scared it'll end the same way. That they'll disappear too. That history will just repeat itself, but with a different name, a different voice, a different version of the same silence. That's what ghosting does. It doesn't just hurt once. It teaches you to fear connection, to doubt your instinct, to second guess every smile, every reply, every pause. I remember sitting with someone once. Kind eyes, warm voice. They asked me, "What are you thinking?" And I said, "Nothing." But the truth was I was thinking, what if you leave too? What if this moment is just a setup for disappointment? What if I let myself feel safe and you vanish like they did? But I didn't say any of that because I didn't want to scare them. I didn't want to seem too broken. So I smiled and changed the subject. We learn to do that, don't we? Mask our hurt, filter our feelings, play it cool. When inside we're still begging for someone to stay long enough to prove we're not forgettable, to stay long enough to break the pattern, to stay long enough to show that not everyone leaves, but not everyone does. Some people come into your life and make you feel seen again, heard again, held again. And when they do, part of you softens. Not all at once, not with a dramatic hug or some perfect line. It starts quietly, in how your hands stop shaking when you reply, in how your voice doesn't lower when you speak about your past, in how you let your guard down, a little, just a little. But before that, there's still pain, still days where you scroll past memories like landmines, still nights where a dream tricks you into thinking they came back, still that moment when a part of you whispers, "If I had just been more interesting, maybe they'd still be here." And I want to pause on that thought, that quiet self-blame, because I had it too. I thought if I was funnier, prettier, wiser, less clingy, more mysterious, they would have stayed. But love shouldn't require shape-shifting. Your worth isn't tied to your ability to be less. Let me say that again. Your worth isn't tied to your ability to be less emotional, less expressive, less you. Because the right people, they won't run when you reveal your soul. They won't disappear when you say, "I care about you." They won't ghost you because you got real. They'll lean in, they'll show up, they'll say, "Thank you for being honest." Even if they don't know what to do with all of it, they'll try. They'll try because you matter to them. And I know it's hard to believe those people exist when all you've known is the kind who leave. But they do, even if you haven't met them yet. Even if the only people you've known are the ones who said forever and meant until I get bored. Even if you feel like you're always the one who remembers while everyone else forgets. Let me tell you this. You are not unlovable. You are not too much. And you are not invisible. You feel deeply because you love fully. You remember birthdays. You save screenshots of late-night conversations. You notice when someone's favorite song changes. You check in when no one else does. That's not weakness. That's the kind of heart the world needs more of. So yes, they left. But don't leave yourself because of them. Don't shrink your spirit to fit the silence they left behind. Don't turn your love into caution tape. Feel it. Grieve it. Name it. But don't forget, you're still here. You stayed. And that's something worth holding. You know what I hated most? It wasn't just that they disappeared, it was how normal it became. How easily I adjusted to being nothing to someone I once gave everything. I stopped checking their profile, stopped writing drafts I'd never send, stopped searching for signs. But that didn't mean I stopped hurting. It just meant I got better at hiding it, better at smiling when someone asked how I was doing, better at changing the subject when their name came up, better at pretending that I hadn't memorized the sound of their silence. Because that's what time does. It doesn't erase them. It just teaches you how to carry them quieter. I remember one afternoon months later, I found a photo we took together. It wasn't anything dramatic, just them holding a cup of coffee, smiling at something I had said off camera. And for a second, my chest tightened. Not because I missed them, but because I remembered how real it felt at the time. That they were someone who looked at me like I mattered, like I was someone they'd choose, again and again. But ghosting doesn't just take the person, it messes with your past. It makes you question every memory, every compliment, every "I'll always be here." You start rewriting the good times, start doubting the laughter, start wondering if maybe they never cared at all. But deep down, you know that's not true. Because you were there, you felt it. You remember how your stomach flipped when they said your name, how your heart steadied when they held your hand, how safe it felt for a while. And just because someone chose to walk away doesn't mean what you had wasn't real. It was real when you laughed. It was real when you listened. It was real when you stayed up past midnight just to make sure they were okay. Their exit doesn't cancel your care. Their silence doesn't undo your sincerity. But I know how hard it is to not internalize the absence. Because when someone ghosts you, they leave you with all the questions, all the what ifs, all the maybes, all the reasons that loop in your head until you start believing it must have been you, but it wasn't. It wasn't your kindness. It wasn't your openness. It wasn't your softness. It was their inability to hold what you offered. You gave something rare, something honest. And not everyone knows what to do with that. Some people aren't ready for real. They want attention, not connection. They want the thrill, not the depth. They want the mirror, not the soul. But you gave your soul. And even if it wasn't received right, don't stop giving like that. Because the world needs people who feel deeply, who love honestly, who show up even when it's inconvenient. Don't let their silence turn your love into a warning sign. Let it be a lighthouse, one that still stands, still shines, even when no one sails near. Because one day, quietly, gently, someone will. And when they do, they won't ghost you. They'll sit beside you. They'll say, "Tell me everything," and they'll mean it. They'll stay for the messy, stay for the silence, stay for the scars. But for now, it's okay to be in this moment, even if it's lonely, even if the ache still lingers. You're not weak for remembering. You're not foolish for hoping. You're not broken for missing someone who didn't know how to hold you. You're just human. And some nights, being human means grieving what could have been while still trusting what could be. You know that moment when you finally stop waiting? Not with anger, not with bitterness, just stillness. It happens slowly. You don't even realize it at first. One day you wake up and their name doesn't echo as loud. You walk past your old cafe, and you don't look for them in the crowd. You hear that one song, the one they once sent you at 1 a.m., and instead of tearing up, you hum along. Not because you forgot, but because the memory doesn't cut as deep anymore. That's how healing shows up. Quiet, gentle, like morning light through the blinds. Not blinding, just soft. And in that softness, you start to feel yourself again. Not the version they loved, not the version that got ghosted, but you, the you that existed long before they arrived, the you that stayed even when they didn't. I had a moment like that recently, walking down a street I used to avoid because it reminded me of them. There was a breeze, warm, light, the kind that brushes against your skin and doesn't ask for permission. And I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for a message, not for closure, not for them. I was just walking, living, breathing, being. And I wish I could tell you there was a switch, a moment where everything made sense. But no, it was more like learning to hold my own hand after someone else dropped it. More like learning to enjoy silence without assuming it meant rejection. More like learning that I could be whole, even with a few cracks. Some days you'll still feel it. The ghost of their voice, the shadow of their name. But it won't haunt you anymore. It'll just visit like an old photograph you don't hate looking at. Like a story you've already finished, but you keep the book on the shelf because it taught you something. And what it taught you is how strong you are. Not the loud kind of strength, not the kind that screams, well, I'm over it, but the kind that whispers, I survived, I stayed, I'm still here. You stayed when they left, when it hurt, when it didn't make sense. You stayed, you kept loving, kept trying, kept waking up even when your chest felt too heavy to lift. You stayed. And now, slowly, you're becoming someone new. Not because of what they did, but because of what you chose to do after. To keep your heart open. To choose softness anyway. To rebuild without becoming bitter. That takes courage. And if no one told you this before, I'm proud of you. Truly, for holding on when it would have been easier to close off. For choosing light, even when darkness felt more familiar. For staying kind in a world that keeps trying to harden you. You didn't deserve to be ghosted. You didn't deserve to be forgotten. But you do deserve peace. You do deserve presence. You do deserve to be loved out loud, not just in private moments that vanish. So here's something small, just for you to carry in your pocket, on the days it still stings a little. You are not forgettable. Your voice still matters. Your feelings still matter. Your story is still unfolding. They were a chapter. You are the whole book. And somewhere, maybe not today, but someday soon, someone will read every page and say, I'm not going anywhere. But until then, you keep walking, you keep breathing, you keep staying, because you are still here, and that's everything.